Hollis Vain knelt beside his wife's grave, the worn saddle heavy in his trembling hands. 5 years since Emma died, bringing their stillborn son into this brutal world. And now he was burying the last piece of her, the saddle from the horse she'd made him promise never to sell. Time's up. Vain. Cyrus Blackwell's shadow fell across the grave marker. 3 armed men flanked him, hands resting on gun belts. Hollis stood slowly. "I paid you $200 last month." Blackwell smiled, unfolding a document. "Contract says 500. Your signature's right here." "That's not you changed it." "Prove it." Blackwell's eyes glinted. "You got till 5 o'clock today. Give me that horse, or I take everything the land your wife died for, this grave. All of it." Hollis looked at Emma's headstone, then at his last horse grazing near the broken fence. "Choose wisely." Vain, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Blackwell's laughter echoed as his men rode away, leaving dust devils dancing across the scorched earth. Hollis watched the sun climb higher. 6 hours. He had 6 hours before Blackwell returned with the sheriff. He walked to the cabin, each step feeling like wading through mud. Inside, he opened the rusted metal box beneath the floorboards. $3. A silver necklace with Apache beadwork. Nothing else. The necklace caught the light, Emma's most treasured possession. A gift from a woman whose child she'd saved from drowning 15 years ago. The memory stabbed at him, but he pushed it away. No time for the past. Hollis counted his options on calloused fingers. 1, sell the horse to Blackwell. Betray Emma's dying wish. Live as a man without honor. 2, run. Abandon the land Emma bled for. Let Blackwell win everything. 3, fight. Get killed. Blackwell had the law, the guns, and the truth didn't matter when you were dead. He loaded his rifle. 2 bullets left, not enough. Through the window, he could see the horse grazing a strong chestnut mare, the only thing between him and starvation. Without her, he couldn't reach town for supplies, couldn't plow the fields, couldn't survive the coming months. The sun climbed higher. 5 hours now. Hollis sat on the porch steps, head in his hands, the weight of hopelessness pressed down like a boulder on his chest. Emma would know what to do. Emma always knew. A sound made him look up. 2 figures stumbled along the fence line, small, moving erratically. Hollis grabbed his rifle and stood. As they drew closer, his breath caught. 2 young women, Apache, their traditional deerskin dresses torn and bloodied. The younger one, barely 16, supported her companion, who could barely walk. Blood soaked through a crude bandage on the older girl's shoulder, dripping onto the dry ground. The younger one saw him and raised a trembling hand. "Please," she called out in broken English. "Help. My sister." Hollis jumped the fence and ran to them. Up close, he could see the older sister's wound, a deep stab, still bleeding. Her face had gone gray. She wouldn't last an hour without help. "What happened?" Hollis asked, supporting the injured woman's weight. "Men. White men. They attack us near the river." The younger sister's voice shook. "We run. But my sister, she..." The older sister collapsed. Hollis caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. Her breathing came shallow and fast. Shock. Blood loss. Death approaching. "Your village how far?" 10 miles north. But without horse, The girl looked at Hollis's mare with desperate eyes. "She will die before we walk." Hollis's stomach turned to ice. His horse. They needed his horse. He looked at the wounded woman, then at his mare, then at the sun. 4.5 hours until Blackwell returned. If he gave them the horse, he'd lose everything. The land, his future, his last connection to Emma. If he refused, this young woman would die right here in the dirt. The younger sister grabbed his arm. "Please, mister, I beg you." That's when Hollis noticed it, the necklace around the wounded woman's throat. Silver beadwork, Apache design. Identical to the one Emma had left him. His heart stopped before he could speak. Hoofbeats thundered in the distance. Multiple riders, coming fast. The younger sister's eyes went wide with terror. "They found us." Hollis made his decision in the space between heartbeats. "Get her on the horse," he said, already moving toward the mare. "But Mr. Eads, now." He pulled the saddle off with quick, practiced movements. No time to explain, no time to think about what he was losing. The younger sister helped Hollis lift her unconscious companion onto the mare's bare back. Blood smeared across the horse's coat. The animal shifted nervously, smelling fear and death. Hollis steadied the mare, then took the silver necklace from around his own neck, Emma's necklace. He pressed it into the younger girl's palm. "When you reach your village, give this to your father. Tell him Hollis Vain kept his promise." The girl stared at the necklace, her eyes widening. This is my mother's. She lost it many years ago when she looked up at Hollis with sudden understanding. You are the husband of the white woman who saved her." "Go," Hollis said quietly. "Your sister's running out of time. What about you, those men? I'll handle it. Ride north, cross the stream, turn left at the Eagle Rock. Don't stop." He slapped the horse's flank. The mare bolted, carrying both sisters into the wavering heat. Hollis watched them disappear into a cloud of dust, his last hope riding away with them. The hoofbeats behind him grew louder. He turned to face whoever was coming, his hands empty, his rifle still on the porch. But it wasn't the men chasing the sisters. It was Blackwell. 4 hours early, and he'd brought 5 men instead of 3. Hollis's blood went cold. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. He'd counted on having time to figure something out. Anything. Blackwell reined his black stallion to a halt, surveying the scene with cold satisfaction. "Changed my mind. Vain. Why wait till 5 when I can take what's mine right now?" The contract said, "I don't care what I said." Blackwell dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with authority. "Where's your horse?" Hollis said nothing. Blackwell's men spread out, checking the corral, the barn, circling the property like buzzards. One of them called out, "No horse. Boss corral's empty." Blackwell turned slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to fury to something worse, delight. "You sold it. In the last 30 minutes, you somehow sold your horse." "I gave it away." "To who?" Blackwell stepped closer. "You're lying. Nobody gives away their last horse. Not unless..." His eyes narrowed. There were tracks in the dirt. 2 sets, small feet, women. He smiled. "You didn't." Hollis met his gaze and said nothing. "You helped Apache fugitives." Blackwell's voice dripped with mock amazement. "You gave your horse, your only asset, to help 2 savages escape. They weren't fugitives. One was dying. Doesn't matter what they were." Blackwell pulled a document from his coat. Federal law prohibits aiding individuals who leave the reservation without permission. That's a crime. Vain. That's prison time. You can't prove, can't I? Blackwell gestured to his men. 5 witnesses say they saw you give your horse to 2 Apache women. 5 upstanding citizens against 1 desperate debtor. Who do you think the law will believe? One of Blackwell's men returned from searching the barn. Boss, there's blood on the fence, fresh, and tracks leading north. Blackwell's smile widened. Even better. Now it's not just aiding fugitives, it's aiding wounded fugitives, possibly criminals. Maybe they attacked someone, maybe killed someone, and you helped them escape. That's a lie. Is it? Blackwell drew a long hunting knife from his belt. The blade gleamed in the sunlight, and Hollis could see dark stains along its edge. A snake design coiled down the handle. I found this knife near where those 2 squaws attacked a prospector this morning. Poor man barely survived. Hollis stared at the blood on the blade. The same knife. The wound on the older sister's shoulder matched this blade exactly. You stabbed her, Hollis said quietly. You attacked those women. Prove it. Blackwell cleaned the blade on his sleeve. Or better yet, explain to the sheriff why you helped my attacker escape. Because that's how this looks now. I was defending myself, and you aided my assailant. The trap snapped shut with perfect precision. Hollis had tried to do the right thing, and Blackwell had turned it into a noose. Here's your new situation, Blackwell said, pulling out another document. You now owe me $800, breach of contract, plus damages. You have no horse, no way to pay, and you're about to be arrested for federal crimes. But I'm a reasonable man. Sign over your land right now, and I'll forget all of this. I'll even tell the sheriff those women ran a different direction. Hollis looked at the paper, then at his cabin, then at Emma's grave. I need time to think. You have 60 seconds. I need... A shout from one of Blackwell's men cut him off. Boss, dust cloud, coming from the north, big one, everyone turned. In the distance, a massive cloud of dust rose against the sky, growing larger by the second. The ground began to tremble. Blackwell squinted. What the hell is that? The rumbling grew louder. Not thunder, not a storm. Hoofbeats. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Hollis felt a strange mixture of hope and dread. The 2 sisters couldn't have reached their village yet. It was impossible. Unless someone had already been coming. One of Blackwell's men backed toward his horse, hand on his gun. Boss, that's a war party? That's gotta be 50 horses, maybe more. More, another man whispered. Sweet Jesus, that's way more. The dust cloud resolved into shapes warriors on horseback, riding in formation, moving fast. Blackwell's face went pale. They're coming here. They're coming right at us. Hollis stood frozen, watching the approaching riders, a terrible question forming in his mind. Were they coming to rescue the 2 sisters? Or were they coming for blood? The dust cloud exploded into a dozen mounted warriors, their horses thundering across the dry earth. Blackwell's men scrambled for their weapons, but froze when they saw the lead rider. A man in his 50s, his face marked by a long scar across his left cheek, sat tall on a painted stallion. His eyes swept across the scene with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Behind him, 11 warriors held rifles and bows, their expressions unreadable. Behind the chief, Hollis spotted the younger sister Najoni. He now knew riding double with one of the warriors, and strapped to a travois pulled by another horse lay her sister, still unconscious but alive. "Nahali," Blackwell said, his voice suddenly smooth as oil. "What a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect be silent." Nahali's English carried a thick accent but perfect clarity. He dismounted in one fluid motion and walked directly toward Hollis, ignoring Blackwell entirely. Hollis stood his ground, unsure whether he was about to be thanked or killed. Najoni slipped from her horse and ran to Nahali's side. She spoke rapidly in Apache, gesturing toward Hollis, then toward Blackwell. As she talked, she pulled something from around her neck, the silver necklace, and placed it in Nahali's weathered palm. The older man's eyes widened. He stared at the necklace, then at Hollis, his expression shifting from stern to something else entirely. Grief, recognition, understanding. "This necklace," Nahali said softly, his fingers tracing the beadwork. "My wife made it. She gave it to a white woman many summers ago, a woman who saved our daughter from drowning." Hollis nodded. "Emma, my wife. Your wife saved Ayanna." Nahali's voice caught. "Ayanna was my wife. She died 2 winters past." The connection hit Hollis like a fist to the chest. Emma had saved Ayanna, who had given her the necklace. Ayanna had become Nahali's wife. The 2 sisters he'd just helped were Ayanna's daughters. The circle completed itself in a way that felt both impossible and inevitable. "Najoni tells me you gave them your last horse," Nahali continued. "You gave them this necklace, knowing it was precious. You sent them to safety, even though you faced danger yourself." Her sister was dying. There wasn't a choice. There is always a choice. Nahali extended his hand, a gesture that made several of Blackwell's men gasp. Apache chiefs didn't shake hands with white men, not unless something significant had happened. "My daughter says you saved Kiona's life. That makes you family." Hollis shook his hand, feeling the strength in the older man's grip. Blackwell cleared his throat, stepping forward with a forced smile. "Nahali, I'm glad we could clear this up. There's been a misunderstanding. I did not speak to you." Nahali turned his cold gaze on Blackwell. "Cyrus Blackwell, I know who you are. I know what you do. You buy land cheap from desperate men. You take what is not yours. Now that's not fair. I'm a legitimate businessman. Hollis Vain is under my protection now." Nahali's words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "If you trouble him, you trouble me and my people. Do you understand?" Blackwell's jaw tightened, but he managed to keep smiling. "Of course, no trouble at all. This was just a business discussion. Nothing important." He glanced at his men. "We should go. Let these folks catch up." As Blackwell mounted his horse, he rode close to Hollis and leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper only Hollis could hear. "You think you're saved. You think these savages can protect you. I'll be back. Vain. And next time, not even your new friends will help you." The threat sent ice down Hollis's spine, but he kept his face neutral until Blackwell and his men rode away. Once they were gone, Nahali turned back to Hollis. "You have lost your horse to save my daughter. This debt must be repaid. Among my people, a life debt is sacred. I don't need... You need many things." Nahali gestured at the run-down cabin, the dry fields, the broken fences. "You are alone. You have no horse, no help, and men like Blackwell circling like coyotes. Come to our village. Rest. We will give you 3 strong horses and supplies. It is the least we can do. Hollis hesitated. Going to an Apache village could give Blackwell more ammunition against him. But staying here, defenseless and horseless, meant waiting for Blackwell to return with the sheriff and more lies. My father invites you as a guest, Nizoni added. As family, please come. The word family decided it. Hollis hadn't felt like part of a family in 5 years. All right, he said. I'll come. Good. Nahali smiled for the first time, the expression transforming his severe features. Ride with me. They traveled north, following the same path the 2 sisters had taken. The Apache warriors surrounded them, alert for trouble but not hostile. Hollis found himself studying their faces, their weapons, their easy confidence in the saddle. One warrior in particular kept staring at him, a younger man, maybe 25, with intense dark eyes and a permanent scowl. He rode close to Nahali, clearly someone of importance. That is Goyakla, Najoni whispered, noticing Hollis's attention. My cousin, he does not trust white men. Can't say I blame him. He lost his brother to white soldiers 3 years ago. Since then, he believes all white men are enemies. She glanced back at Goyakla, who was now speaking quietly with another warrior. Both of them looking at Hollis. Be careful around him. After an hour's ride, they crested a hill, and Hollis saw the village below, dozens of traditional wickiups arranged in a wide circle. Cook fires sending up thin columns of smoke, children playing near a stream. It looked peaceful, safe. Welcome to our home, Nahali said. As they descended toward the village, a young boy came running up the hill, shouting in Apache. Nahali's expression changed immediately, his entire body tensing. What is it? Hollis asked. Nahali didn't answer right away. He listened to the boy, asked a question, received an answer. Then he turned to Hollis, his face grave. Soldiers are coming. They search for Apache horse thieves who attacked a white man this morning. His eyes met Hollis's. Someone has already reported you to the army. Hollis felt his stomach drop. Blackwell. Of course it was Blackwell. The man hadn't retreated. He'd gone straight to the nearest military fort to file a report. How long until they arrive? Hollis asked. The boy says they are 3 hours behind him. Maybe less. Nahali's hand moved to the knife at his belt. They will come here looking for you. Goyakla rode up beside them, speaking rapidly in Apache. Even without understanding the words, Hollis could hear the anger, the accusation. Najoni translated quietly. He says you have brought soldiers to our village. He says we should never have trusted a white man. Hollis looked back the way they'd come. Then at the peaceful village below. Then at Kiona lying unconscious on the travois. He'd tried to save 2 lives, and somehow he'd managed to put an entire village in danger. 15 cavalry soldiers rode into the Apache village with the precision of men who'd done this before. Their blue uniforms were dust-covered, their faces hard. Leading them was a captain in his 40s, his graying beard neatly trimmed, his eyes scanning the village with practiced efficiency. Nahali. The captain raised his hand, signaling his men to halt. I need to speak with you. Nahali stepped forward, positioning himself between the soldiers and his people. Women gathered children and moved toward the wickiups. Warriors emerged from various directions, armed but not threatening. The tension was thick enough to choke on. "Captain Green," Nahali said evenly, "what brings the army to my village?" "We received a report that 2 Apache women left the reservation without permission and stole a horse from a white settler." Green's voice was firm but not hostile. "We're here to investigate. My daughters were attacked by a white man. They fled for their lives." The white settler, Nahali gestured toward Hollis, saved them. He gave his horse freely. Green's eyes moved to Hollis for the first time, studying him with an unreadable expression. "Hollis Vain. That's right. Mr. Cyrus Blackwell filed a complaint. Says you helped fugitives escape and stole your own horse to do it." Green pulled a document from his saddlebag. "Says you're wanted for breach of contract and aiding criminals. Blackwell's a liar. That may be." Green's tone suggested he'd heard similar accusations before. "But I still have to bring you in for questioning. Federal law." Goyakla pushed forward, his hand on his knife. "You will not take him. He is our guest." Warriors began moving closer, creating a human barrier between Hollis and the soldiers. Green's men shifted nervously, hands drifting toward their weapons. "Stand down," Nahali commanded in Apache, then in English. "All of you, stand down." "Nahali." Goyakla protested. "They cannot. If we fight them, more soldiers will come. They will use this as an excuse to remove us from our land entirely." Nahali's voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "Is that what you want?" Goyakla's jaw clenched, but he stepped back. Hollis felt the moment crystallizing around him, the choice between his own freedom and the safety of people who'd shown him kindness. The same choice he'd made with the horse, only bigger now, more dangerous. "I'll go with you," Hollis said quietly. "I won't cause trouble for these people." Hollis, "No." Nijoni started, but Nahali placed a hand on her shoulder. "He makes his own choice," Nahali said, though his eyes held profound sadness. "As we all must." Green nodded to 2 soldiers, who dismounted and approached Hollis with iron shackles. "That necessary?" Hollis asked. "Procedure," Green said flatly. "Nothing personal." The metal closed around Hollis's wrists with a decisive click. As the soldiers led him toward a spare horse, Nijoni ran forward. "We will come for you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We won't let them know." Hollis shook his head. "You stay here. Take care of your sister. That's what matters." They rode east, away from the village, away from the only friendly faces Hollis had seen in 5 years. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and dust clung to everything. After an hour, when the village had disappeared behind distant hills, Green called a halt. "Dismount," he ordered his men. "We'll rest the horses here." The soldiers obeyed, some checking their animals, others taking long drinks from canteens. Green walked over to where Hollis sat on his horse, still shackled. "Get down," Green said. Hollis awkwardly dismounted, his bound hands making the simple task difficult. He expected to be tied to a tree or shackled to a wagon wheel. Instead, Green pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the shackles. Hollis stared at him, confused. "What?" "Listen carefully. Vain." Green's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I know what Blackwell's doing. I know he wants your land. I know he changed that contract." Hope flickered in Hollis's chest. "Then why?" "Because I can't publicly oppose him," He's got connections with the territorial governor. He's got money. He's got influence I can't match. Green glanced around to make sure his men weren't listening. But I can help you disappear. I don't understand. Tonight, when we camp, I'll make sure the guard falls asleep. You take a horse and ride east, not north, back to the Apache village. They'll be watching that direction. Go east. Lose yourself in the territories. Start over somewhere Blackwell can't reach you. Hollis's mind raced. Why would you do this? Because I had a daughter once. Green's voice went rough with old pain. She died of fever when she was 7. If someone had sacrificed their last possession to save her life, like you did for those Apache girls, I'd owe them everything. He paused. You did a decent thing in an indecent world. I'm returning the favor. It was everything Hollis needed to hear, a way out, a chance. Salvation offered by an unexpected ally. Thank you, Hollis said, his throat tight. Don't thank me yet. Just be ready when I give the signal tonight. They made camp at dusk in a small canyon. The soldiers built a fire, ate hardtack and beans, traded quiet conversation. Green positioned Hollis away from the others, near where the horses were tethered. Stay alert, Green whispered as he passed by. Around midnight, Hollis waited, his heart pounding. The hours crawled by. Soldiers took turns on watch, but the man assigned to guard Hollis kept yawning, eventually sitting down with his back against a rock. At what Hollis guessed was near midnight, Green approached, leading a saddled horse. Now, Green breathed. Ride hard, don't look back. Hollis took the reins, every instinct screaming this was too easy. But desperation overruled caution. He mounted and urged the horse into a trot, then a gallop. The canyon walls blurred past. Cold night air stung his face. Freedom felt so close. Then he heard it. Hoofbeats, multiple riders, coming fast behind him. He looked back and his blood froze. Green led the pursuit, his face no longer sympathetic, but coldly triumphant. The entire company thundered after him. It had been a trap. Hollis pushed his horse harder, but it was already tired from the day's travel. The cavalry mounts were fresh, well-trained. Within minutes, they surrounded him, cutting off escape in every direction. Green's rifle pointed at Hollis's chest. Get down. Slowly. You said. Hollis couldn't finish the sentence. I lied. Green smiled without warmth. Blackwell's paying me $200 to bring you back charged with attempting to escape military custody. That's a federal crime. Vain. Much worse than helping some Apache girls. Hollis felt the bottom drop out of his world. He'd been played. Perfectly. You son of a... Save it. Green gestured, and 2 soldiers yanked Hollis from his horse, forcing him to his knees. This time the shackles went on his wrists and ankles both. Blackwell doesn't just want your land anymore. He wants you in prison or dead, and I'm going to help him get exactly that. Why? Hollis's voice came out broken. You said you had a daughter. I do have a daughter. She lives in Boston, needs money for school, and Blackwell's paying well. Green leaned close. I told you what you needed to hear to make you run. Escape attempts carry a 10-year sentence. Blackwell wanted you as a convicted criminal, and I delivered. The cruelty of it, the calculated manipulation hit harder than any physical blow. Hollis had believed. He'd trusted. He'd reached for hope and found poison instead. "There's more you should know," Green continued, almost conversational now. "About that woman Blackwell mentioned, Ayanna, Nahali's wife." Hollis looked up. "She didn't die in an accident 2 years ago like the official report said. Blackwell killed her." Green said it casually, like mentioning the weather. "She discovered he was poisoning the underground water source to force the Apache off their land. She threatened to report him. So he solved that problem with his hunting knife." Horror washed over Hollis in waves. "Nahali doesn't know. Nobody knows except Blackwell, me, and now you. And you won't tell anyone. Because dead men don't talk." Green straightened. "Blackwell's plan is elegant, really. Frame you as a criminal so the Apache lose their white ally. Then drive them off their land and take both properties. The water underneath is worth a fortune. You're helping him murder innocent people. I'm helping him conduct business. There's a difference." Green turned away. "Tie him up. We ride at dawn." As the soldiers bound him to a tree, Hollis felt something inside him break. Not just hope, something deeper. The belief that doing the right thing mattered. That sacrifice meant something. That justice existed in this brutal world. He'd tried to save 2 girls and had condemned himself, endangered an entire village, and uncovered a murder that would never be avenged. Emma's voice whispered in his memory, "Always do what's right, Hollis, even when it costs everything." But what was right, when right, led to ruin. The soldiers settled in for the night. Hollis sat in the darkness, back against rough bark, iron cutting into his wrists and ankles, watching the stars appear one by one above the canyon rim. For the first time since Emma's death, he wished he'd died with her. A small sound made him turn his head. In the shadows beyond the firelight, something moved. A figure, small and quiet, creeping between the rocks. Najoni stepped into the edge of the darkness, where Hollis could just barely see her. She pressed a finger to her lips, her eyes wide and urgent. She'd followed them. She'd heard everything. Najoni vanished before Hollis could speak, melting back into the darkness like smoke. But her presence changed something. Someone knew the truth now. Whether that mattered, he couldn't say. The soldiers took him to the territorial town of Copper Ridge 2 days later. The journey passed in a haze of heat, thirst, and the constant bite of iron against his skin. Green rode ahead, never once looking back at his prisoner. They threw Hollis into a cell that stank of old sweat and despair. 4 walls of stone, 1 barred window too high to reach, a bucket in the corner. The doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed in his chest. Hollis sat on the floor. There was no bed, and put his head in his hands. He'd lost everything. The horse, the land, his freedom, any hope of honoring Emma's memory. And somewhere out there, Blackwell was poisoning water and planning to drive innocent people from their homes. And no one would stop him because a dead Apache woman and a jailed white man had no voice that mattered. Emma's face swam in his memory. The way she'd looked at him the day they married, standing in front of the cabin they'd built together. "We'll make something good here, Hollis. Something that lasts." It had lasted exactly 7 years before she bled out on their bed, their stillborn son in her arms. Her last words begging him to take care of the land they'd fought for. He'd failed her. Failed everyone. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Hollis didn't look up. What was the point? Well, Blackwell's voice dripped with satisfaction. Don't you look pathetic? Hollis raised his head slowly. Blackwell stood outside the bars, impeccably dressed despite the heat, a smile playing at his lips. Behind him, a deputy leaned against the wall, clearly in Blackwell's pocket. What do you want? Hollis asked, his voice raw. Just to see you one last time before your trial tomorrow. Blackwell pulled a chair close to the bars and sat, crossing his legs casually. I wanted to savor this moment. Congratulations. You won. I always win. Vain. That's what separates men like me from men like you. You think doing the right thing matters? I think getting what I want matters. Guess which philosophy works better? Hollis said nothing. Judge Aldrich Kane will hear your case tomorrow morning. Blackwell continued. Old friend of mine. He's very efficient. You'll be convicted of aiding fugitives and attempting to escape military custody by noon. Sentenced by 1 o'clock. Let me guess, hanging. Oh no, too quick. Blackwell leaned forward. 10 years hard labor in the territorial prison. You'll break rocks until your hands bleed, sleep on stone, eat slop. And every single day you'll remember this moment, when I won and you lost. The cruelty was almost beautiful in its completeness. Blackwell had thought of everything. After you're convicted, Blackwell went on, I'll visit Nahali. I'll tell him you confessed to attacking his daughters, that you used them to escape your debts, that everything you did was a lie. He won't believe you. Won't he? You're a convicted criminal by then. I'm a respected businessman. And I'll have Captain Green to back up my story. Blackwell smiled wider. Nahali will hate you. The Apache will spit on your name, and I'll comfort them in their anger. Offer them a deal on their land, a fresh start somewhere else. Away from the cursed ground where the white man killed their mother and betrayed their trust. Hollis lunged at the bars, rage flooding through him, but Blackwell didn't even flinch. There it is, Blackwell said softly. The animal underneath. You're no better than me. Vain. You just pretend to be. I never killed anyone. Neither did I, legally speaking. Blackwell stood, straightening his coat. Ayana's death was ruled an accident, a woman wandering alone in dangerous territory, probably attacked by a mountain lion. Very tragic. No witnesses, no evidence. Just another dead Indian. You murdered her. I solved a problem. Blackwell moved toward the door, then paused. You want to know the beautiful part? She came to me first. Offered to keep quiet about the water poisoning if I'd leave her people alone. She actually thought I'd negotiate. He laughed. I invited her to my ranch to discuss terms. We rode out to see the disputed land. And when we were alone, well, my knife does such clean work. The casual admission, the complete lack of remorse, made Hollis's stomach turn. I weighted her body with rocks and dropped it in the deepest part of the canyon river. She's 40 feet down. Still there, probably. Fish food by now. Blackwell's eyes gleamed. Nahali spent 6 months searching for her. Put up a reward, organized search parties, never found a trace. The not knowing destroyed him worse than finding a body would have. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. Blackwell tipped his hat. Enjoy your last night of relative comfort. Vain. Tomorrow, your real punishment begins. He left, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Hollis sat in the silence that followed. feeling something cold and final settle over him. This was how it ended. Not with honor or justice, but with lies winning and truth dying in darkness. He thought about Emma, about the 2 Apache sisters he'd tried to save, about Ayanna at the bottom of a river, unmourned because her killer still walked free. All his choices had led here. Every attempt to do good had made things worse. Maybe Blackwell was right. Maybe being good was just another way of being a fool. Hours passed. The light from the high window faded from orange to purple to black. Hollis sat motionless. Beyond hunger, beyond hope. A scraping sound jolted him from his stupor. The window. Someone was at the window. "Mr. Vain?" A whisper came. "Don't make noise." Hollis looked up. Najoni's face appeared between the bars, silhouetted against starlight. She'd climbed the outer wall somehow. "Najoni," he breathed. "What are you quiet?" She pushed something through the bars, a thin piece of metal. A lockpick. "I heard everything that evil man said. Everything about my mother." Hollis caught the lockpick, his hands shaking. "You can't be here. If they catch you." "I don't care." Her voice cracked. "He killed my mother. He's going to take our land. He's going to hurt my father." Tears streamed down her face. "You're the only one who knows the truth. You're the only one who can stop him." "I can't stop anything from inside a cell." "Then get out." She pushed something else through a small knife. "I'll help you escape. My father and the warriors are 2 hours away. They're coming. But they don't know about the trial tomorrow. By the time they arrive, you'll already be convicted." Hollis stared at the tools in his hands, instruments of escape, of hope, of another choice that would probably end in disaster. "If I escape, they'll hunt me forever. They'll blame your people for helping me. Nahali's village will be destroyed. If you don't escape, Blackwell wins everything." Najoni's voice rose, then dropped again. "Please, I can't let my mother's killer walk free. I can't watch my father lose everything. You're our only chance. There has to be another way." "There isn't." She gripped the bars. "My cousin Goyakla wanted to attack the town, rescue you by force. My father refused because it would mean war. But maybe war is better than watching evil triumph." Hollis thought about Emma, about what she would do. But Emma was dead, and her goodness hadn't saved her or their child. He thought about Ayanna, weighted with rocks, 40 feet down in darkness, her killer walking free and wealthy. He thought about Nahali, about to lose everything to the same man who'd murdered his wife. The lockpick and knife felt heavy in his hands. "If I escape," Hollis said slowly, "I can't run. I'd have to go after Blackwell directly, expose him, make him confess somehow. How, I don't know." The truth of his helplessness crushed him. "I don't know how to beat him. He has money, power, the law. What do I have?" Najoni was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You have us, and you have the truth. My father says the truth is like water. It always finds a way through stone. Given time. We don't have time. Then we make time." Her eyes hardened with determination that reminded him painfully of Emma. "Tomorrow morning, my father will bring every warrior to this town. We won't attack, but we'll be there, all 200 of us. That will scare them. Scare Blackwell. And when people are scared, they make mistakes." It was desperate, reckless, likely to end with everyone dead or imprisoned. but it was something. Hollis looked at the lockpick, then at Najoni's tear-streaked face, then at the stone walls that would be his home for the next decade if he did nothing. Emma's voice whispered in his memory one last time. Even when it costs everything, he made his choice. "I won't use these to escape," Hollis said, holding up the lockpick and knife. "Not yet." Najoni stared at him through the bars. "Well, but you have to listen to me." Hollis moved closer to the window. "If I escape tonight, Blackwell wins. He'll say I'm guilty, that I ran because I'm a criminal. The judge will issue a warrant. Soldiers will hunt me and anyone who helped me. Your father's village will be destroyed. Then what do we do?" Desperation edged her voice. "We make Blackwell confess. In front of everyone. In that courtroom tomorrow. He'll never confess. He's too smart, too careful. Everyone has pride. Najoni, especially men like Blackwell. They can't help but brag when they think they've won." Hollis's mind raced, pieces falling into place. "If your father brings the warriors like you said, Blackwell will see it as a threat. He'll be nervous, wanting to end things quickly. And when I offer him exactly what he wants, my land, my surrender, he'll gloat. That's when we trap him." "How?" "By making him think he's so completely victorious that he can afford to be honest. By asking him to explain his brilliance to everyone." Hollis gripped the bars. Men like Blackwell need witnesses to their genius. They can't just win, they need everyone to know how cleverly they won. Najoni was quiet, thinking, "What if it doesn't work? Then I use your knife and we fight our way out. But this is our best chance, maybe our only chance to get real justice. Not just revenge, but justice that ends Blackwell's schemes forever." She bit her lip. My mother. She would want justice, not revenge. My father says she always chose the peaceful path. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. But I want him dead. I want to kill him myself for what he did to her. I know. Hollis's voice softened. Believe me. I know. But if you kill him, you become a murderer. You go to prison or get hanged. And your father loses another daughter. Kiona loses her sister. Is that what your mother would want? No. The word came out broken. We do this the right way. We make him confess in front of the judge, the soldiers, the whole town. We let the law hang him, not our hands. Hollis paused. Can you be that strong? Najoni wiped her eyes roughly. I'll try. That's all any of us can do. Hollis handed the knife back through the bars. Keep this. If my plan fails, you'll need it more than me. Now go, before someone sees you. Wait. She pulled something else from her clothing, a small leather pouch. This is sacred earth from the place my mother loved most. She used to take Kiona and me there to watch sunsets. Carry it tomorrow. For strength. Hollis took the pouch, feeling the dry earth inside. A piece of Ayana, of the land she'd died trying to protect. Thank you. Najoni climbed down, disappearing into the night. Hollis sat back against the wall. Clutching the pouch, the weight of what he'd proposed settled over him. He was betting everything, his life, Najoni's future, Nahali's village, on the chance that Blackwell's ego would override his caution. It was a terrible plan, desperate and dangerous. It was also the only plan that might actually work. He thought about Emma, about the night before she went into labor, when she'd sat beside him on the porch watching the stars. Do you ever regret it? He'd asked her. Leaving your family in Boston for this hard life, she'd taken his hand. Every choice costs something. Hollis, but regret only comes when you choose the easy wrong instead of the hard right. I chose love. I chose this land. I chose you. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times. Even knowing. He couldn't finish. Even knowing you might die trying to bring our child into this world. Especially knowing. She'd smiled in the moonlight. Because some things are worth dying for. Love, family, truth. The belief that we can make something good in a broken world. 2 days later, she was gone. For 5 years. Hollis had wondered if she'd been right. If choosing the hard right was worth it when it ended in blood and loss and grief. Now, sitting in a cell that stank of despair, he finally understood. Emma hadn't been saying the hard right would lead to happy endings. She'd been saying that choosing it was what made you human instead of animal. That maintaining your humanity mattered more than safety or survival or victory. Blackwell had chosen the easy wrong at every turn. And it had made him rich, but hollowed him out inside until nothing remained but greed and cruelty. Hollis had tried to choose the hard right, saving the sisters, protecting Nahali's village, refusing to murder even his worst enemy, and it had cost him everything. But he was still human. Still capable of love and sacrifice and hope. And tomorrow, he'd prove that humanity was stronger than Blackwell's hollow evil. He slept fitfully, waking every hour to the sound of guards changing shifts. When gray dawn light finally filtered through the high window, he was already awake, clutching Ayana's earth pouch. Footsteps approached. The deputy appeared, unlocking the cell. "Judge is ready for you," the man said, not quite meeting Hollis's eyes. They led him out in chains, through corridors and into morning sunlight that hurt his eyes. The courthouse sat across the dusty street, a 2-story wooden building that served as both legal center and town hall. But Hollis barely noticed the building. He noticed the Apache. They lined both sides of the street, 200 warriors on horseback. Silent and unmoving as statues, Nahali sat at the front, his scarred face unreadable. Beside him, Goyakla gripped a rifle, his knuckles white. Njoni and Kiona sat on a single horse farther back, both watching Hollis with fierce intensity. Townspeople had gathered too, drawn by the spectacle. They huddled in doorways and on porches, nervous and whispering. The presence of so many Apache warriors had clearly terrified them. Perfect. Captain Green stood on the courthouse steps, his face pale as he surveyed the gathered Apache. Hollis could see the man doing calculations. Could his 15 soldiers control a situation that had suddenly become a powder keg? And there, emerging from the courthouse with a satisfied smile, came Blackwell. He saw Hollis, saw the chains, saw the Apache warriors. His smile wavered for just a moment before reasserting itself. "Quite the escort," Blackwell called out, his voice projecting confidence he might not feel. "Nahali, I hope you're not planning anything foolish." "We come to witness justice," Nahali replied, his voice carrying across the silent street. "We come to see if white man's law is true or false." "Oh, it's true," Blackwell said. "Very true." He gestured toward the courthouse. "Shall we begin?" The deputy pushed Hollis forward. As he climbed the steps, he caught Njoni's eye. She nodded once, understanding. This was it. Do or die. Truth or lies. Hollis touched the pouch in his pocket, Ayana's earth. carried from the place she'd loved most. He walked into the courthouse, into whatever came next, carrying the weight of everyone's hope on his shoulders. The door closed behind him with a sound like a coffin lid. The courtroom was smaller than Hollis expected, just 20 wooden benches, a raised platform for the judge, and windows that let in dust-filled morning light. Half the town had crammed inside, and through the windows he could see Apache warriors maintaining their silent vigil outside. Judge Aldrich Kane sat behind his desk, a heavy-set man in his 60s with jowls that shook when he moved. Blackwell's friend, Blackwell's tool. "Bring the prisoner forward," Kane announced without preamble. The deputy shoved Hollis to a spot before the bench. No defense attorney, no jury, just him, the judge, and Blackwell sitting in the front row with that same satisfied smile. "Hollis Vain?" Kane read from a document. "You stand accused of aiding fugitives from the Apache reservation and attempting to escape lawful military custody. How do you plead this was the moment?" The first move in a game, Hollis had no guarantee of winning. "Guilty," Hollis said. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Through the window, he saw Nahali's head snap up. Najoni looked stricken. Blackwell's smile widened. This was going even better than he'd planned. "Well," Kane said, clearly pleased by the easy confession, "that simplifies matters. I sentence you to..." "Wait." Hollis raised his chained hands. "I want to make a statement first." Kane frowned. "That's not necessary when you've already..." "Federal law allows a convicted man a final statement," Hollis said, praying he'd remembered that detail correctly from some half-forgotten conversation years ago. "Unless territorial courts don't follow federal law." Kane's frown deepened, but he couldn't argue with federal statute in front of this many witnesses. "Very well. Be brief." Hollis turned to face Blackwell directly. "Mr. Blackwell, you won. You got everything you wanted. My land, my freedom, my life. I just want to understand one thing before I go to prison." Blackwell raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. "What's that? Why my land specifically? Why go to all this trouble?" Hollis made his voice humble, defeated. "There are dozens of properties around here. What made mine so valuable?" It was the right question. Blackwell's eyes gleamed. The chance to explain his brilliance, to have everyone understand how clever he'd been, it was too tempting. "A fair question," Blackwell said, standing. He addressed the courtroom like a professor before students. "Your land, Vain, sits directly above the largest underground water source in the territory. Whoever controls that water controls everything ranching, farming, mining operations, worth a fortune to the right buyer." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several property owners looked at each other nervously, probably wondering if their land was next. "But the Apache land shares that same water source." Hollis pressed. "How are you planning to get both properties?" Blackwell hesitated. This was dangerous territory. But his ego, his need to be recognized as the brilliant strategist, pushed him forward. "The Apache will leave," Blackwell said with dismissive confidence. "They're already on the edge of starvation. A few more hardships and they'll accept relocation." "What hardships?" Hollis kept his voice neutral, curious rather than accusatory. Blackwell waved a hand. "Natural causes, drought, contaminated water. These things happen." "Contaminated?" Hollis tilted his head. "You mean like the water that made several Apache children sick 2 years ago?" "Exactly like that." Blackwell smiled. "Tragic, really." Through the window, Hollis saw Nahali's face change. The chief had heard, understood. And when Ayanna, Nahali's wife, discovered what was happening to the water, Hollis's heart hammered, but he kept his voice steady. What then? The courtroom went silent. Even Judge Kane leaned forward. Blackwell's smile faltered. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking. Hollis took a step closer, his chains rattling. What happened when she threatened to expose what you'd done? She didn't. Blackwell caught himself, but too late. He'd just confirmed Ayanna had confronted him. Didn't what? Hollis pressed. Didn't tell anyone or didn't survive to tell anyone. Blackwell's face flushed red. You're trying to trap me. I'm trying to understand how you won so completely. Hollis spread his hands in surrender. You beat me. You beat everyone. You're clearly the smartest man in this territory. I just want to know how you did it before I spend 10 years breaking rocks. The flattery worked. Blackwell's posture relaxed slightly. His need to be acknowledged as superior warred with his caution and ego won. Ayanna was a problem, Blackwell admitted. She came to me, threatened to report the water situation to the federal authorities. I invited her to my ranch to negotiate. And Hollis barely breathed. And I solved the problem. Blackwell's eyes hardened. Permanently. Gasps erupted throughout the courtroom. Through the window, Hollis saw Goyakla raise his rifle. Nahali grabbed his arm, stopping him. But the chief's face had gone stone cold with rage. Judge Kane banged his gavel. Mr. Blackwell, I advise you to advise me. Blackwell spun on him. I own you. Kane, I own this whole town. You think I'm afraid to admit what I did? Ayanna died because she stood in my way. Just like Vain here is going to rot in prison because he stood in my way. That's how the world works. You murdered her, Hollis said quietly. I eliminated an obstacle. Blackwell pulled his hunting knife, the one with the snake design, from his belt. With this, quick and clean. Then I weighted her body with stones and dropped her in the canyon river where no one will ever find her. The courtroom exploded in shouts. Several townspeople backed toward the doors. Judge Kane stood, his face pale. This court, Kane tried to regain control, but his voice shook. This court is mine. Blackwell roared. I've spent 5 years building an empire here, and no one, not some dead Indian woman, not some pathetic rancher, not anyone will stop me. Captain Green stepped forward from where he'd been standing against the wall. Cyrus Blackwell, you've just confessed to murder in front of 50 witnesses. Blackwell spun on him. You work for me. I work for the United States Army. Green's hand moved to his pistol. And you just admitted to murdering a woman on federal territory. That's a capital crime. For the first time, real fear crossed Blackwell's face. He looked around the courtroom at the horrified faces, at Green's drawn weapon, at Judge Kane's shock. No, Blackwell said. No, you can't. This was a setup. Vain tricked me. Into telling the truth, Hollis said softly. Blackwell's fear transformed into rage. In one swift motion, he grabbed Hollis by the chains and pressed the knife to his throat. Back away, Blackwell shouted at Green. All of you, back away, or I cut his throat right here. The blade pressed against Hollis's windpipe, sharp enough to draw blood. He could feel Blackwell's hand shaking with fury and desperation. Green raised both hands slowly. Let him go, Blackwell. You're only making this worse. Worse? Blackwell's laugh was half-mad. I'm facing the gallows. How could it be worse? Through the window. Hollis saw Nahali dismount. The chief was walking toward the courthouse, his face a mask of controlled fury. Behind him, 200 warriors waited for a signal. One wrong move, and this building would become a bloodbath. Nahali's coming, Green warned. If he sees you holding a knife to Vain's throat, good, let him come. Blackwell backed toward the rear door, dragging Hollis with him. He wants to see his wife's killer. Here I am, tell him I enjoyed watching her drown. The knife bit deeper. Hollis felt warm blood trickling down his neck. The courthouse door burst open. Nahali stood in the entrance, backlit by morning sun, and his eyes locked onto the knife at Hollis's throat. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then Nahali spoke in Apache one word, sharp and final, outside. 200 warriors raised their weapons. Nahali, Hollis said, his voice steady despite the knife at his throat. Don't do this. The chief's hand rested on the knife at his own belt. Outside, warriors drew bowstrings taut. The tension was thick enough to suffocate on. He killed my wife, Nahali said, each word carved from stone. He poisoned our water. He deserves to die. He does, Hollis agreed. Blood trickled down his neck where Blackwell's blade pressed. But not by your hand. Not today. Listen to him. Blackwell's voice cracked with desperation. Tell your savages to back away, or I'll toss them. Hollis drove his elbow backward into Blackwell's ribs. The man gasped, his grip loosening for just a second. It was enough. Hollis dropped to his knees and rolled away. The knife slashed air where his throat had been. Green's pistol fired. Blackwell screamed, the knife clattering from his hand. He clutched his shoulder where the bullet had struck, blood seeping through his fingers. Don't move, Green commanded, his weapon still aimed. Next one goes through your heart. Blackwell collapsed against the wall, breathing hard, his face gray with shock and pain. Nahali crossed the courtroom in 3 strides. He picked up the fallen knife, the knife that had killed his wife, and stood over Blackwell's crumpled form. Please, Blackwell whimpered. Please, I'll give you anything. Money, land. Name your price. You took my wife. Nahali's voice was barely above a whisper, more terrifying than any shout. You took the mother of my children. You poisoned our water and made our children sick. You tried to steal our land and destroy our people. He raised the knife. Hollis struggled to his feet, chains rattling. Nahali, wait. The chief didn't lower the blade. Why should I not take what he took from me? Because Kiona and Najoni are watching through that window. Hollis pointed to where both sisters stood outside, tears streaming down their faces. What do you want them to see? Their father becoming a murderer, or their father being stronger than the man who killed their mother? Nahali's hand trembled. Your wife saved my wife from drowning. Hollis continued quietly. Emma told me about it, how Ayanna risked her own life to pull a stranger from the river. That's the woman your daughters need to remember. A woman who chose life over death, mercy over revenge. He deserves to suffer. Then let him suffer in prison. Let him hang legally, in front of everyone, so the whole world knows what he did. Hollis took a step closer. Let him die knowing he lost. That his schemes failed, that the people he tried to destroy stood strong while he fell. For a long moment, Nahali stood frozen, the knife still raised. Then he looked through the window at his daughters. At Kiona, still healing from her wounds. At Najoni, who had been so brave and so broken. At the 200 warriors who would follow him into death if he gave the word. Slowly, deliberately. Nahali lowered the knife. He drove it into the wooden floor beside Blackwell's head, so close it nicked the man's ear. "I am not you," Nahali said. "I do not kill the helpless. I do not poison water. I do not murder women." He straightened. "Captain Green, take this man to your jail. Let your law do what it promises." Green nodded, clearly relieved. "Yes, sir." He gestured to his soldiers, who rushed forward to bind Blackwell's hands. Blackwell was hauled to his feet, blood soaking his shirt, his face twisted with hatred. "This isn't over. I have lawyers, connections. The governor himself owes me favors." "You confessed to murder in front of 50 witnesses, Judge Kane said, his voice shaking but firm. "No amount of money will save you from the gallows. Cyrus, I'll personally write the death warrant." They dragged Blackwell toward the door. As he passed Hollis, he spat, "You'll regret this. Vain. All of you will." A soldier cuffed him silent. The courtroom remained frozen until Blackwell disappeared from view. Then, like a dam breaking, everyone began talking at once. Judge Kane banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order, I need order." When silence fell, Kane turned to Green. "Captain, what about your role in this? You admitted to taking bribes to falsely arrest Mr. Vain." Green's jaw tightened. "I did. I have no excuse. I betrayed my oath for money." "I'm stripping you of your rank," Kane said. "You'll face military court-martial for corruption and false imprisonment." Green nodded stiffly, removing his captain's insignia and dropping it on the nearest bench. His soldiers looked away, ashamed of their commanding officer. Kane turned to Hollis next. "Mr. Vain, the charges against you are dismissed. The contracts Blackwell held were obtained through fraud and intimidation. Your land is legally yours." He paused. "I apologize that justice took so long to find you." Hollis couldn't speak. Relief and exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. The deputy unlocked his shackles. The iron fell away, clattering to the floor. Nahali placed a hand on Hollis's shoulder. "You could have let me kill him. Why didn't you?" "Because you're better than him. Your daughters deserve a father who chose the right path, even when it was harder." Hollis met his eyes. "Just like my wife would have wanted." Nahali pulled Hollis into an embrace, a gesture that made several townspeople gasp. Apache chiefs didn't embrace white men, but Nahali didn't care about tradition in this moment. "You gave your horse to save my daughters," Nahali said quietly. "You risked your life to bring justice for my wife. You kept me from becoming the thing I hate. I owe you 3 debts I can never fully repay. You owe me nothing. Then I give you something freely, family." Nahali stepped back, speaking loudly enough for the entire courtroom to hear. "From this day, Hollis Vain is brother to my people. His enemies are our enemies. His land is protected as if it were our own. This I swear." The Apache warriors outside raised their weapons in acknowledgement. A chorus of voices echoed Nahali's oath. Hollis felt tears threatening. After 5 years alone, after thinking he'd never belong anywhere again, Najoni and Kiona burst through the door, running to embrace him. Then they turned to their father. And for several minutes, the 3 of them simply held each other, crying for the mother and wife they'd lost, celebrating the justice they'd won. Judge Kane cleared his throat. This court is adjourned. People filed out slowly, talking in hushed voices about what they'd witnessed. The story would spread, how an Apache chief had chosen mercy over revenge, how a desperate rancher had outsmarted the territory's most powerful man, how justice had finally prevailed. Hollis stepped outside into sunshine that felt warmer than before. The Apache warriors were dispersing. Their vigil ended successfully. Several nodded to him as they passed acknowledgement from men who'd previously viewed him with suspicion. Goyakla approached last, his expression still hard but no longer hostile. You are braver than I thought, white man, and wiser than many. He extended his hand. I was wrong about you. Hollis shook his hand, feeling another barrier fall. As the warriors rode back toward their village, Nahali turned to Hollis one more time. Come, he said, we have work to do. What work? Rebuilding your ranch, sharing the water fairly between our lands, creating something good where there was only greed and death. Nahali smiled, a rare expression that transformed his scarred face. You kept your promise to my wife's memory. Now I keep mine to you. Hollis thought about his ruined cabin, his broken fences, his empty future. Then he looked at the people around him. Nahali, Nijoni, Kiona, Goyakla, all the warriors who'd stood vigil for a stranger's justice, not empty after all, not alone anymore. Let's go home, Hollis said. 3 months later, Hollis stood on the porch of his rebuilt cabin, watching the sun set over land that finally felt like home again. The ranch had been transformed. 200 Apache hands had raised new fences, dug irrigation channels connecting his land to theirs, and constructed a sturdy house with room enough for guests. 4 strong horses grazed in the corral gifts from Nahali that Hollis had protested but eventually accepted. Every week, families from the village visited. The children called him Uncle Hollis. Nijoni was learning to read English from his late wife's books. Kiona's shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a thin scar she wore without shame. The ranch had become something Emma would have loved, a bridge between two peoples who'd spent too long viewing each other as enemies. Blackwell had hanged 2 weeks prior. Green faced military prison. Judge Kane had quietly retired, his reputation ruined by association. Hollis touched the silver necklace around his neck, returned to him by Nahali with the words, "Keep it. You've earned it twice over." He'd given away his last horse thinking he'd lost everything. Instead, he'd gained a family larger than he'd ever imagined possible. Sometimes the hardest sacrifices bring the greatest rewards, not in gold or land, but in the people who stand beside you when darkness falls. Have you ever been wrongly accused like Hollis? Where telling the truth seemed impossible because the powerful controlled the narrative.